Okay, to actually demonstrate the spot illustration project and how digital coloring and vectorizing line work and all of that comes into play, I'm going to use a birthday card I did this weekend for one of my nephews and see if I can turn it into a spot illustration. Now, my nephew chose the theme of Godzilla. He's really into the new Godzilla movie. Let's see, where did I put it? There. So, I sketched out my idea. I just made this little card for him. So there's my Godzilla sketch, looking at different references of the new Godzilla. Paired it with this little quote, very deep. And I wanted it to be a spot illustration, so I made sure that the whole thing was very self-contained. And I'm going to use kind of the Japanese red sun symbol behind it. Okay, the next step, I inked it. So I did this traditionally. I just took a piece of tracing vellum. I tried two different versions, but let's focus on the newer Godzilla version. And I traced the lines I wanted to keep with ink. So that's where I'm going to start with the digital process. So let's open my inked line work with Photoshop. I scanned it at a fairly high resolution so that I could do this to it. The first thing I need to do is kind of digitally clean up my sketch. Now I could have inked it in the computer as well. But I still like using ink pens. I enjoy that process. Though the computer is getting better and better at being able to match that feeling. Okay, so now that I have the inked lines, how do I clean it up? Well, I'm going to make a duplicate of it. Then I'm going to go to Levels, and I'm going to push my lights and my darks until it's basically just black and white in the thickness that I want. I can always use my eraser and clean up little spots, or just paint them in pure white. I'm going to use a hard-edged brush here. Clean up some of the traces of the pencil that's still around it. But that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to get rid of all the whites. So I'm going to use the magic wand, uncheck contiguous, select all the whites, say select inverse, so it selects only the black lines, and then duplicate only the black lines so they're floating on empty space, like so. And now I'm going to save that as a PNG. And I always call these tests because they're just part of the process. And I'm going to save it to the desktop as a test PNG. Okay. Now I can leave Photoshop for a little bit. And I'm going to open up that test PNG with Illustrator or Vector Magic or any other tool I like that vectorizes. Traces it into a vector for me. So if I open it as a PNG in Illustrator, it's going to outline it in blue, and it's going to give me immediately the tracing options. I'm going to choose silhouettes, which will give me solid black paths. That looks pretty good, but if I don't want it quite so thick, I use my threshold here. And I'm still previewing it, and I let it get a little thinner. I love this silhouette tracing feature. But remember, you have to click here to be able to control your results. And I'm looking for the right kind of outline. Okay, that looks good, so then I'm going to expand it. Now they're all clean vector shapes. If I need to, I can go in and I can adjust my shapes, but the reason I like to ink by hand is I don't usually need to do too much of that. But there are little things I can easily correct using the pencil tool. I can just straighten out these little bumps. So it'll look a little sharper. The spikes on his back. I can make them pointier if I want. I'm just using the pencil tool. But I don't want everything too clean. In fact, I think that's a little too much. Okay, so now I've got my line work. Now I'm going to save this as an EPS. And I'm going to call it, instead of the test, I'm going to call it my vector. But it's still my vector line work. And the EPS will allow me to save it or to open it in Photoshop and to keep it as a smart layer, as a vector image. I can put that right on a t-shirt. Right now I'm going to open up Photoshop, because if I try to open up this image in Photoshop as an EPS, it will force me to vectorize it, and I don't want to do that. So instead I'm going to open a new file that's the right resolution. And that's a very common mistake. So I'm going to say File New. You forget that you need good quality resolution. So I'm going to make this nice and big, so I have a lot of room to play. So I'll make it 14 inches wide by 11 inches tall by 350 pixels per inch. This is going to be my Godzilla spot illustration. It's the new Godzilla. And now I'm going to take that EPS line work, click and drag it right from the desktop, and resize it, holding down Shift so it doesn't distort. And now it is a smart layer, so it will not let me do things like paint on it, but it is perfectly clean, matching the resolution that I set up in the Photoshop file. And if I needed to make it bigger, it would match bigger. Okay, now I'm ready to color. So I have a lot of kind of complex line work here, but a fair amount of it is overlapping. So I can take that chunk with the magic wand tool for my inked lines. I can go to my flat color layer. I can pick something to fill it in with, just as a start. And I'm on my way, flat coloring. Now, flat coloring Godzilla can be pretty straightforward. You just take one color, you fill it in everywhere, but his tongue might be a different color. His eyes might be a different color. And because I don't have all my lines perfectly sealed, I might just need to use the paintbrush a little bit too. However you want to do it. As long as your color is separate from your black line work. Now this is why I say you don't need to worry about your edges, because if I paint with this color and I'm at 100% opacity, I'm going to use a hard brush, and I paint things in, like his spikes here. I'm going way over the lines, but that's okay. This is where digital coloring is very, very helpful. Now I can simply select the empty space around the creature in my line work layer and then delete it from my flat color layer to clean it up. The beauty of spot illustrations. All right, the other local colors I might need, a nice color for his eyes. Let's do kind of a golden yellow. Nice red color for his tongue, or pink color. Then inside of his mouth, maybe a dark brown. All right, so in his toenail, maybe a kind of a pale yellow. Actually, I think I like that for the eye a little bit better too. Then I might as well do the other toenails. All right, so there's Godzilla in flat color. Now I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna duplicate that. I'm gonna try duotone cut edge color. First, I'm going to adjust the duplicate, maybe make it a little bit lighter, maybe a little less saturated. Duplicate again. Now go the other way, make it darker, less saturated, maybe a slightly different hue, a little more grayed out. Okay, now how do I do cut edge? Well, I'm going to erase the highlights away by cutting them out. So I'm just going to lasso and delete little sections that I think would be good highlights on him, where the light's catching his form. Again, I don't need to worry too much about overlapping. But I am kind of drawing my own shapes here, just like if I were cutting a silk screen. Doesn't matter if I draw over the whites. Because I'm just cutting away from one layer like this. And because my black lines are safe on another layer that's protected, a vector layer no less, I don't need to worry about erasing anything I don't want. And I've got all my softer edge or lighter colors underneath, filling it in already. It's the beauty of duplicating your work. Now you can take a lot of time with this and give it a lot of complexity. I'm just going fast. Give a little bit of a texture, so it looks like he has scales. All right. So now I have a duotone option, but maybe I want that tongue to be a little bit duotone as well, and the toenails. And so I just do the same thing, and I'll be finished.